Boy, it'd be handy to have a second gear in this thing. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm John Holmes, and we're going to do some updates on the Sur Ron B, Light B, MX. I still don't know what it's called, but I had some issues with the battery when it was coming in, if you remember. Wanted to give you an update on that. And also, I had talked down about these wheel sets a little bit and wanted to do some follow-up on that. First of all, let's see what the battery state of charge is right now. It is at 20%. So you press that little button on there and it tells you, roughly how much battery capacity is left. And I had some issues where it was cutting out on me at about 40% left. I had only gotten, it was right at 40 kilometers of range on it, and was a little bit concerned about that since the bike had shipped in with a BMS tripped and I had to reset it. And if you watch the first video, you kind of know what's going on there. But I kind of rode it hard today. I got it down to 20% on the battery. It is, let's see, 30 miles or so on this trip, and it still hasn't gone into limp mode. So it seems like the battery's gonna be okay. I don't know if originally there was maybe a string of cells that were kind of out of whack since they got discharged so low and the BMS was kicking off because of that, or maybe it was the cold temperatures because I was riding around freezing the day when it happened. And at any rate, it seems to be okay at this point. So that's really good news here. So let's go to the wheels. Now, I had made the original complaint about the wheels. Primarily, the spokes are a little bit too large for the hub flange in the front, in my opinion, and also the nipples are very, very tiny. Tiny nipples are never a good thing on bikes, and I'll show you the reason why right now. So I've put about 180 miles or so on this bike, and that's about enough time. Usually it's between 100 miles and 1,000 miles depending on how hard you ride. But 100 mile is a really good point to where you want to go through and make sure your wheel is tensioned properly. I actually heard a spoke loose on this when I was riding, and so I did a little bit of investigation. And here's basically how you check your spoke tension on a bike. Ideally, you would have the bike off of the ground so there's no tension on the wheel. However, this is kind of a good enough sort of situation here. You can probably hear how all these spokes are more or less the same tension, but we get around, that spoke is just dead. Now I've already gone around and checked all the other spokes. That's the only dead spoke on the rear. And let's just check out the front real quick. I'm pretty sure that they're all good too, but essentially we run through real fast. Oh, and that one's okay. Yeah, we got a couple of spokes that are maybe a little, so I'll have to go back in and kind of retension this wheel up. Like I said, between 100 miles and 1,000 miles, you really need to do that on any wheel set. It's very standard practice as the spoke heads are going to bed into your hub flange, and then also the nipples are going to bed into the rim a little bit. It's just kind of a standard thing unless you are a wheel builder and you know how to pre-stress a wheel. I know how to pre-stress them, and that means that I also know that they didn't do that from the factory. So I'm going to at least try to get that spoke up to tension. A lot of times you'll try to get a wheel, perfectly straight, zero wobbles at all back and forth. But when you're not dealing with rim brakes, it's much more important when you don't have rim brakes to have all of the tension the same on the wheel. You may have a little bit of wobble side to side. You may even have just a teeny bit of hop. Hopefully you don't if the wheel was built good to begin with. But having an even tension around the entire wheel is far more important than a perfectly true wheel. So this one dead spoke, just so dead, I'm going to tension it up. And it's actually a blue Park spoke wrench, which on a motorcycle is slightly surprising, but as I said, these nipples are extremely small for what they should be, in my opinion, as a bike builder. So the downside about these nipples being so small is that you really can't tension them too much before the nipple itself just rounds right off. And if you're looking down at, I'm looking at the top of the wheel right here. If you're going to tension a nipple, it's going to be the same, righty-tighty. So looking at it from the other way, it kind of looks like you're loosening, but I always think about it from the top. And so I'm going to righty-tighty this guy and see if we can get her back up to tension. So far, so good. Feels good. It's not going to round off yet. So that's a full turn or so. Pretty much there. Oh, it's getting pretty tough. I don't want to round this sucker off. See, normally I would use just a wrench, like I don't know what this is, a 5mm, 4.5 millimeter, whatever it is. I would just use a normal wrench so I'd get a little bit more leverage on it. But seeing as how these nipples are very small and they're also looks to be nickel plated brass, they're going to round out really easily with something with so much leverage. So this is probably the best idea for these. There we go, brought it right back up. And we got a couple that are, you know, a little lower, a little higher, but I'm not going to go into that until I pre-stress this wheel much better. Now, I'll just tell you what pre-stressing a wheel is if you are so inclined to do this to yourself. I would take a wrench, like a 10mm open-end wrench or a box-end wrench, and I would literally stick them in between the spokes like this and then just really bear down on them in both directions. Trying not to bend the spokes themselves, but to pull a lot of stress into the spokes and let them relax. That is going to bed the spoke into the hub flange, and that's going to bed the nipple into the rim as much as it can go. And then after you do that on all the spokes, tighten them up back to where they were. So if you're good with music, you can literally hear what tension that they're at. And the goal would be to pre-stress them all, go back through, and then re-tension them back. And it usually won't take much, maybe a quarter turn or something like that at most. Get them back up to their original tension, and then you're good to go. So keep an eye on your wheels, and we're going to do some close-up shots and show you, you know, all of these little rounded nipples. I was counting, and there's probably a third of these nipples that are rounded off. And if I lost tension on them, there's nothing that I can actually do to get them back up. And I'll, like on this guy right here, this one's rounded off. Let's see if I can even get, yeah, all right, I can force this guy on that one. Here's another one rounded off. I can kind of force them on, but I've only got 75% at best of the interface in between the wrench itself and the nipple. You know, this one I've got maybe 50%. There's another rounded, oh, that one's really rounded. This one probably wouldn't take any more tension at all because it's so jacked up. That one's rounded off. Yeah, there's just a whole lot of nipples that are rounded off. And the only way to really fix this wheel itself would be to take it apart, drill it out for larger nipples, and then put larger nipples in there. Not really worth it in my opinion. I would probably just completely unlace it and put a different rim and different spokes and different nipples on there, start fresh. Which I'll be doing here. I just got some hubs in from aebikes.com.au. He's a supplier down for Australia, and he's getting a lot of spare parts in for these bikes that other vendors may not be getting. So he's getting hubs in, he's getting chain rings, extra chains. I'm not sure if he has any of the front cogs or any of that yet, but he's still doing part supply that a lot of companies really doesn't look like are going to be doing. So that's kind of cool. I bought, I think, 6 hubs from him so I can have some spares to lace up. Also got a set of 17-inch rims from Lunicycle. They made their Supermoto rims or whatever they want to call them. And so I'll be able to kind of check out the quality of those. I should get those in a few days, and we'll make another video covering those. And then I'm going to also build my own set of 17s for this bike just to have a nicer wheel set. But for the cost, for the cheap ones that Luna's getting made in China, pretty hard to beat the $400 price range. They come with tires, they come with the chain ring on there, they come with the disc brake, the discs themselves already on the wheels. So for the price, it's really hard to beat that. That's a lot cheaper than I could build a full wheel set myself for, even not including my labor or anything like that. So, you know, for the cost, I figure, yeah, I'll just pick them up. So yeah, I guess that pretty much covers it. We went over the main concerns that I had on the first video, the battery, the wheels themselves, and I'm really happy that the battery looks to be going good now. And the wheels, I'll be able to fix them over time one way or another, so probably not gonna be a big deal, but something to look out for. You know, if you do have some problems, you may end up needing to replace some nipples in due time, so just watch out for that. Thanks for tuning in, and if you do have any more questions about the bike or want to see any more updates as we go forward, just give me a holler. Have a good one.